This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here are your hosts, Jeff Gardner and Sean Preston.
Welcome to another episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today we have another good neighbor on with us, and that is Patrick Riel of Aegis Healthcare Solutions. How's it going today, man?
It's fantastic. Thanks for having me.
Super happy to have you on board as well, too, especially with that sun that's shining out there. I got off another show about 30 minutes before we started. Figured, I'm going to have a couple of minutes to just, take it easy, kind of prep for you to come on the show. And then my sister showed up with my long-haired Australian Shepherd from their weekly run that they do together. And this guy is covered in sand. Next thing you know, I'm in the shower.
Oh, no. Scrubbing dogs.
Scrubbing dogs. He's good now. He's just chilling outside there. He's having a nap and well deserved. So.
Oh, that's great. It is a beautiful day.
It is indeed. And definitely looking forward for that snow to melt up there. But other than the weather, that's not what we're here to talk about today. We had a cool little conversation prior to coming on the show. So I'm just as eager as I'm sure our listeners are as well. So why don't we dive right into it? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your business?
Yeah. So Aegis Healthcare Solutions is sort of a multi-tier healthcare service. And the idea behind the name is that we provide solutions to some of the challenges that we're seeing as Ontarians with healthcare. So one of the first things, I'm a paramedic by trade. I've been a paramedic for about 40 years, I suppose. Don't tell anybody. And one of the things that we were seeing is it's difficult for government services to maintain their commitments to 911 and to the public interest and still do all of the non-emergency stuff. So this industry of patient transportation has emerged. And as a paramedic, when I'm dealing with the 911 emerges, we rely on the non-emergency services to help us. So a good example of that is that I'm a flight paramedic. If we land, we often use an ambulance to get from the aircraft to the hospital. It's becoming more and more difficult to do that. And that's frustrating. It's one thing if you land a helicopter at say RVH, but if you're landing at North Bay at the airport, and you're waiting for 4 or 5 hours for an ambulance, that's a challenge. So short story made long. The reality is that traditional ambulance services can't maintain that obligation to 911 and still meet all the non-emergency stuff. So we developed this out of necessity. It certainly wasn't exactly a lifelong dream of mine to do non-emergency patient transportation work, but we developed it. And then while we did that, we said, well, there's other things we can do. I think we can help with some staffing and in particular with paramedics and placing paramedics across Canada, which is something else we do. And, a variety of other things. As it turns out, the patient transportation aspect has by far become the most demanding. And we're just, we've got a relationship with the local hospitals, but I truly underestimated the demand. And so we're happy to be here and we're happy to be doing a great job. And we're happy to be helping. It's a difficult set of circumstances, so we're happy to be here for sure.
Okay, awesome. So for those who don't know, or maybe we can clear it up for them, certainly for myself as well too, what do we consider like a non-emergency call where somebody would need an ambulance? Or is it always an ambulance, or is it a different vehicle? Could you maybe clear the air for us there?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great question. An emergency typically is when you pick up 911 and we don't exactly know what's wrong. A dispatched ambulance will come and help sort through that with the help of the dispatcher and the call taker. However, if you're at the emergency department and now you've been sort of cleared and you need to go somewhere else for more definitive care, and a really good example would be South Lake Hospital. So if you're at RVH Emerge, you need to go to South Lake Hospital. That's a great area where the question of whether it's an emergency or not is a little bit subjective, and it sometimes requires a physician to make that call. If it's something that the local 911 service really ought to do, lights and siren, then it unfortunately is then a question of can they, because they need to respond to the 911s first and then do those transfers between facilities second. Oftentimes they can no longer do those. In the great extreme circumstances, they'll always try, but a lot of cardiac and other things are not things they can do anymore. So we'd be called for that. We don't have lights and siren capacity, and we're not meant to have it, but we can expedite quickly, and that's a great example of something we would do. In addition to that, everything from somebody who's non-ambulatory and stretcher bound but need to get to a clinical appointment, they require an ambulance. But that's a great example of what a traditional community or public ambulance service cannot do. So that's where we also come into play there. So those are great examples of what we do. It's always an ambulance. It's always two medically trained emergency medical care responders. A lot of them are paramedic students or firefighter students. Those are common people that we employ, and we treat it just like an ambulance service otherwise, without the lights and siren.
Okay. You're out there doing what you're doing every single day, and it's why I love doing what I do so much, because we get to meet so many different people, so many different businesses out there. It's knowledge is power. Like, you don't know what you don't know. And there's another one for me. It's like, I never knew that this existed, out in the local market, that there are these issues. And it's nice to be able to bring them to light and to talk about it, because it's an important thing. Like, people, health is the one thing that if we don't have it, obviously we're not around. It needs to be in order. And so when somebody is not doing well health-wise and they can't get access to particular services that they need or be able to get to an appointment, like that's a big problem.
It is a big problem, and it's hard enough to get that appointment, but let alone to miss it because there wasn't transportation available. So yeah, it is. And a lot of the public doesn't really have, in many cases, a deep understanding of all of the moving parts of healthcare. So another thing we do is patient advocacy, where we just provide an information service to help people understand what's going on. So, for example, if a patient is sent to Princess Margaret to pursue some questionable lab results, that's incredibly intimidating to the patient and their family. But oftentimes the most intimidating part is that there's just this gray area of communication and unknowns. And sometimes helping people understand some language and understand the processes really helps alleviate that pretty brutal anxiety otherwise. We've been through that as a family ourselves many times. So we're happy to do that as well. That's another service we provide.
So what would be like the main mission here? What is the main problem that Aegis Healthcare is looking to try to solve out there? Is that to put more wheels on the ground, increase the amount of availability that there is for non-emergency calls?
Yeah, that's a really tough one, because what we would like to do is solve all of the problems within healthcare, not just in Ontario, but nationwide. I do a lot of work in Nunavut and in other parts of Canada. We have a healthcare crisis, to be fair, in Canada. It's just a system that's busting at the seams in every direction. So our mission goal, is to try and help a little bit, and it's just a daunting task. It would be great if we had countless ambulances and countless staff members and answers to everything, but it's not feasible. So at the end of the day, I think we need to be a little bit, as a company, we're a little bit humble in saying, well, we're trying to do what we can in a big picture. And we can't take ownership for all of the problems, or that's government stuff. But we can sure help our community. RVH is where my children were born, and this is my community. This is where we're from, and so anything we can do to make it a little bit better, I think, is our mission statement. To be honest, there's no dream of fixing it all. That's for sure.
So how are we getting the message out? Like, who is that avatar? Who is that person that that you need to reach in your day-to-day in order to make these changes or push the envelope down the line so it can get to the right people to bring up the issue so people can act on it?
Well, a lot of that is your MPP, I guess, and questions about healthcare authorities and hospital administrations. RVH is an amazing facility, and they work exhaustively,
totally,
to do their best. But that having been said, people leave frustrated all the time and sometimes blame RVH for problems that are actually a much bigger problem and have little to do with RVH. And it's just because the Ontario public is a little bit exasperated, and I feel for them, myself included, to be honest. So who we're trying to communicate with, I guess, is it would be great if we could empower our local community members, just the general public here in Simcoe County, to let them know we exist, to let them know that if they need some help, it's always worth a call, and we'll always try and do what we can. We've got great relationships with the hospital, so there's no need to try and reach out to them any further. There's contracts in place and things. But as far as the public, as far as the dinner table conversation, just letting people know that you're not alone in this bleak, sometimes bleak looking world of healthcare. And if you need some a friendly voice or some guidance or some understanding, we're more than happy to help with that stuff. And paramedics are honestly an incredible resource. The training is robust. It's phenomenal. In Nunavut, for example, paramedics are replacing community health nurses in some of the communities because they've got a higher level of scope of practice. So paramedics are, I think, at times a bit of an untapped resource. And that's kind of part of our angle. We're trying to use them more effectively and celebrate them. Physician assistants are another great example. We're seeing more use of them as well. So we hire and place physician's assistants as well as part of the strategy. But yeah, again, how do you fix it is a tough one. It's a big kind of global issue, really, but certainly within Canada from ocean to ocean. So all we're doing is trying our best here in Simcoe County.
Yeah, it takes a really special individual to do the paramedic role. I got neighbors across the road. They're both paramedics, and I inherited this trait from my mother. I'm insanely queasy, so I can't do too much when the blood started, even just talking about veins and stuff like that. I might have been on a different career path, because I am that type of individual that really likes to help people. And as proven by a personality test when I was like 18 years old.
Oh, yeah.
But would you mind maybe elaborating a little bit on what's going up there in Nunavut, some of the special stuff you guys are looking at?
Yeah. That's probably one of the highlights of my career. I started as a paramedic in about 1988, and I've always I get bored easily, and I've never been able to sort of sit at a kind of a 9-to-5 cubicle role, I guess. So even working for just one ambulance service got a little bit boring, and I needed to venture off. And I've had the opportunity to explore Haiti and other parts of the world, but Nunavut, the Canadian Arctic, is just such a phenomenal part of the universe I didn't even realize about. Like, you can read about it and you can see it in some movies, but until you've really been there, you don't get it. And then when you look at healthcare, a lot of my career has been spent with Indigenous healthcare in Canada and Ontario. But when you get up there and you see the Inuit and the Indigenous healthcare system up there, which, by the way, is actually really impressive. Health Canada's done a pretty decent job, I would say. But there's a staffing crisis, and it's hard to get people to go up there and work. And so the Health Canada sort of reached out to paramedics a few years ago, and I've been very proud to be part of the project to bring paramedics up there. And sadly, they're there out of necessity to replace a staffing shortage, a bit of a crisis. But on the positive side, paramedics have done an amazing job. Advanced care paramedics in particular have done a phenomenal job to help meet the needs of local healthcare systems up there, and to provide a direct positive benefit to the people that call Nunavut home, and the Northwest Territories as well. I shouldn't skip them. We do some work there as well. So yeah, it's probably been a highlight of my career to be part of that project.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You come across individuals here and there that we've had a couple of guests on the show that have done some pretty crazy stuff, going way out of their way to find something that they believe in and try to help be the solution to the problem and not the opposite.
Yeah. It feels good. It really feels good.
Everybody's got their journey, right? Doing what they do. I always joke around and say some people come out of the womb and they know exactly what they want to do. They've been doing that their whole career. They retire doing that. Other people, not so much. The stepping stone here. Sometimes it's multiple stepping stones, but it's always nice to get a bit of a backstory behind, who is the Patrick that we're talking to now. We talk about the good things that you're doing out there in our local market and across the country. But what was your journey like leading up to, doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, it was a heck of a ride. I'm not going to lie, a bit of a roller coaster. So I was kind of born into a very artistic left brain family, and I became a musician very early, and started to think my professional career. And I was a young guy, long hair, had a song on the radio at one point, and thought, all right, this is it. And then there was sort of an epiphany and a huge moment, a milestone in my life. And I sadly saw a friend of mine pass away from a car accident, and I was young, and it had just such a profound impact on me. And one of the things that happened is that I wasn't really able to do anything for him because I didn't have any training. I wasn't really in a position to help, and he passed away literally in my arms. And I hated the feeling of not knowing. I could have done more. I should have known something. I should have been able to do something. Looking back now, his injuries unfortunately were catastrophic, but that not knowing was the most horrible feeling you can imagine. Sorry, we've got some stuff going on I didn't know about.
No, it is.
Yeah, I need to know, and I started off with first aid and CPR and kind of community-based stuff, and wanted to learn more. And then one day I saw that big orange helicopter fly across the sky, and I'm still very young. This is the 80s, and I said, that's what I'm going to do. And I love singing. I've had the pleasure of working with some huge Canadian icons, but I want to be on that helicopter, and I want to make a bigger difference. And I never want to be in a position where I don't know something. That was just the worst feeling. And so, a horrible situation inspired me to have the most amazing career. And I continued on with music. I did really well and still do. But my paramedic career has been phenomenal. And it really was born out of A, necessity, and B, that moment of feeling absolutely useless and scared, and watching a really good friend pass away in front of you. You can't really put words to describe what that's like. So I use that. I teach paramedics, young paramedics, and I share that story a lot. And it's not everybody's story, obviously, but it was absolutely what helped me become who I am, and to feel good, and kind of walk with a certain assurity that I made the right call. Because, all of these years later, it's still the best decision I've ever made. Both of those careers were great, but the paramedic thing has been amazing. So now in sort of semi-retirement, this patient transfer service, it's almost a pretty organic, full circle. It feels good. It's a simple thing to be able to help your local hospital. And it's a great way to wrap up a pretty amazing adventure, to be honest.
That's a pretty wild story. Obviously, heart goes out to you for having to go through that experience. Nobody would ever, or I would ever want to wish that on anybody. But I've said this a lot on the show. It's the mental mindset that a human being can have to, when something like that happens, either just take you and suck you into the void, and you're toast upstairs mentally, or finding ways to power through and trying to find the positive in it. It seems like you really kind of took that one, the bull by the horns, and that ended up turning into a positive. And I'm sure if he was still around, he'd be monster proud of you, man.
Yeah, I wonder that sometimes. That's a cool feeling for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I can already tell, and we've only been talking for 24 minutes, so yeah. So are there any myths, any misconceptions that you get out there that maybe you'd like to clear the air for anybody listening?
Yeah, I suppose that I think it kind of brings back the question of the situation with healthcare. But I suppose there's a myth or a misconception that hospitals are, even though they're the direct frontline healthcare provider for your community, that hospitals truly are empowered to fix all of the problems. And so if you look at a hospital like RVH, for example, it's an exceptional. I've been involved in accreditation of hospitals in the past. So you kind of look at each department and look at different criteria, and you measure it, and you decide whether or not criteria is being met, if sort of the goals are being met. RVH has done an amazing job. It's remained accredited. It stands up to accreditation processes all the time, and yet you sadly hear people just slam it. people complain about their experience, or, this one Friday night in the emerge department was just a debacle. And I guess one thing I would just try and say more as just a message of hope is that we're really lucky to have our VH. And it wasn't that long ago that it was a tiny little hospital that sent everything down south. And now it's a stroke center. It's got a cath lab that does amazing work for cardiac victims. And it's got some really, really good people. And if you have a bad experience on a Friday night in emerge, it's not fair that it's a failing of an entire hospital. It's really just a snapshot of what happened to you on one particular night. And I would just encourage the patient, because I've certainly have left more than a few emergency departments frustrated in my career and my journey. But you just have to remember, what, those are really good people. They're overworked. If you approach any of those people in that emergency department on a Friday night and try and get a smile or a chat, it's tough to do because everybody's feeling this incredible pressure. At the end of the day, those are really good human beings that are trying to do their best. And it just, in that one snapshot, that glimpse of time that you looked, if it didn't appear that way to you, it stands to reason that maybe you need to accept that maybe that's just a bad moment, and those people are trying. We're all trying really hard. It's the same with paramedics and firefighters and law enforcement officers. Everybody's really stretched right now. And at the end of the day, those are good people trying to do good things. And I just hope people try and remember that.
Yeah, totally. It takes a special human being to do those kinds of jobs. And like you said, they're stretched thin, right? We're human beings. We're human beings. We're not perfect. And especially when you start compiling a lot of, added stress and chaos and workload and all of that extra stuff, their jobs are tough and they're doing the best that they can with what they got. So give them a free pass if you had a bad experience. And, because when you look at it, like you're saying, from the grand scheme of things, and especially somebody like yourself, like you're way more plugged in than I am. So I have limited knowledge on this stuff, that they are doing a good job out there. And it was crazy. They were just this tiny little hospital, like not too long ago. They're making waves, and you hear about all the good things that they're doing out there all the time. So I think, we are privileged to have this, and Barrie's growing in general. And that's nice to see. I moved here when I'm 35 now. So I was like 6 or 7. I was born out in Winnipeg.
Oh, nice. The PEG.
Yeah. Winter PEG, the good old PEG. And now, I remember I grew up in the Arda Bluffs, seeing, more farmland than anything else, and how the city's grown over time. And I say this a lot on the show. I'm sure people who would listen to my specific podcast versus Jeff, because I do repeat myself, but just, we have a super special, like, tight-knit community here. I've traveled all over the country, traveled all over North America in my sales career. I've met a lot of different people, and I've moved around all over the province into different pockets. So I've had a chance to see different communities and how people interact with each other, and the difference. And up here, it's so different in a very positive way. People are just different quality. They're just really caring. We have this, I think everybody would agree who lives here, like, we're very protective of that culture that we have here.
Yeah.
And for people that have moved from Toronto or from other places and have moved here, I think they quickly start to see that difference in the culture. And I've had a lot of guests on the show. I've met a lot of people in the business community that, didn't grow up here or weren't from here, and have been here from anywhere from 2 to now 5 or 7 years. And they all speak very highly of this place. So we are very special to have that. And RVH is just another example of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true.
So it's always nice to get to know our guests a little bit more from what they just do out there from a work perspective, right? And when we own a business, we're very passionate about what we do. And so that makes working really doesn't feel like work. It's just the business is kind of a part of who we are. And we go out there and we do what we do, and we can work long hours doing it because we enjoy what we do. So balance is not the right terminology for this. I think harmony would be better. It's just finding that tune that, your favorite tune. So when you're not out there working on or in the business, what does Patrick like to do for fun?
Yeah. It's a critical thing, because if you allow yourself to get too absorbed into this one part of your brain, I think you can kind of lose self a little bit, especially with the emergency services in this field. So, like I was saying, I started off as a musician. I've always been passionate about music. I've been really, really fortunate to be able to make a good portion of my income as a working musician. But it is the absolute opposite part of your brain. It is incredible. And so, in the beginning, when I was becoming a paramedic, I found it a little bit difficult to jump back and forth between, reading a book on anatomy and physiology and using critical thinking and sort of all of the scientific process thought, and then jump over to, the really touchy-feely, subjective, how does that song make you feel, and how good it is to make a crowd sing along with you and stuff like that. Totally different parts of your brain. And in time, as I got older, by the time I was in my early 20s, I suddenly realized, what a beautiful harmony it was that one juxtaposed the other, and they kind of provided counterbalance. And, if I could criticize myself on one point, I probably denied myself the ability to take one career as far as I might have because of the other one. And so, at one point when we were touring Canada in a van, there was some real momentum about being a musician professionally forever. And, in the naivety of youth, it was something we were really thinking about. Going to paramedic school sure doesn't allow you to hit the road on tour. And so, we turned down a lot of conversations and a lot of opportunities because, Pat couldn't do it because he's going to Humber College and wants to jump on a helicopter. And so that was a difficult time, but I never let it, I never let one of them defeat me. I always tried, it was a bit of a battle, but I always tried to give them each all the room they needed to in the end, feed me, I guess, feed my soul and make me feel good. There's nothing better than doing a great job on the helicopter and having a good outcome and knowing you did a great thing, and then maybe getting a thank you card 6 months later. That's phenomenal. And so too, there's nothing like, having a large group of people call out for an encore after a great set, and or buy your record or tell you that you wrote a good song or something. So yeah, I've allowed them both to flourish a bit, and I've had nothing but happiness from both. And I guess I'm super lucky that way. But that's, to answer your question, that's definitely it. Some people paint. I think some people go fishing. I jump on the microphone whenever I can.
So you were the singer in the band?
Yeah, I've done a few roles, but typically I'm the singer. Yeah. Right now we've got the Pat Riel band here in Barrie, which is, I think, if I could toot my own horn, one of the hottest acts in town.
Nice.
But yeah, in that band I play guitar and I sing, and we've got an amazing array of musicians in that project. In another band I played some bass. In another band I was with a Tragically Hip tribute out of Hamilton, Ontario forever, called the Practically Hip. And I just played guitar in the background in that project, but it was, that's how I cut my teeth on playing rhythm guitar, I suppose. But yeah, I like to dabble everywhere I can.
Last year they had a Tragically Hip cover band that was going to play downtown. It got canceled because of the wind.
That was us. Yeah,
I was in an Uber on the way to go.
Oh no. That was New Year's Eve, I think, downtown, right? And it was Kim Mitchell and the Practically Hip was slated to open, if it's the same show you're talking about. And the wind and the bitter cold started to wreak havoc on the technical, on the soundboard, and it was actually the technical crew that canceled. And the whole thing got shut down, and I was it's like, if that's the same one you're talking about, but I remember that quite well.
Yeah, we were a little disappointed in that, but I was in a position to go to Kingston and watch him do that final show, or at least watch it. And I was, caught up with work. I was in the car business at the time, on the sales side, traveling to different dealers. So I was just all over the map, and it was one of the regrets I have in life is not finding a spot to just like sit down and like soak all that up. So just recently, maybe like 5 months ago, I watched the documentary on the Hip and
Yeah.
grew up around them and all that stuff. It's a band that, like most Canadians, holds close to the heart and stuff like that. So I mean, I have a great appreciation for them. Didn't know all that much about the entire story, so the documentary was pretty cool. But yeah, anytime we have an opportunity to go out and listen to that, especially if you're in it, I'll be there. That's great music, man.
Yeah. That last concert in Kingston was pretty special. Yeah.
So let's maybe change gears up a little bit. We'll get on a serious tone. You know, when we're out there doing what we're doing, or we're playing this game called life, it's never necessarily easy, and especially in your field, seeing what you guys see on more of a regular basis. But life throws things at us, right? It throws challenges at us, obstacles, heartbreaks, tragedies. People experience all kinds of different things. Some people experience a little bit more than others. But I was alluding to earlier, it's just fascinating to see like how we are, you know, as human beings, how we overcome these things. It's that mental mindset. You got to let it kind of soak you in, or can you pull something from it? Can you see the glass half full? Can we learn from it? Can we pull silver linings? How do we grow? How do we evolve from that? And you know, some people, they do that very well. So I wanted to ask you if you've ever experienced a hardship, a life challenge. Did you overcome it? How did you do it? Did you pull some silver linings from it? Were there any positives you could try to pull from something that was challenging in your life?
Yeah. There's been no shortage of those, it seems. A couple come to mind, but probably one of the most significant ones, right around Y2K, right around 2000, I developed a heart condition. And I was a full-time flight paramedic with the Ontario Ministry of Health at the time. And we didn't have everything we needed in Ontario to identify my specific problem. And so I had some surgery, and the surgery was unsuccessful. And sadly, I lost my medical. They took my ability, my F class, and my ability to fly on an aircraft. And I was grounded, as they say. And that was just beyond catastrophic. You know, I was able to put a lot of energy into some other things I did, but it really messed with your sense of self when you invest so much into who you think you are. And so not being able to work anymore and not being able to put on that uniform for quite a long time hurt a lot. And you know, through serendipity and fortitude, a great friend from the past stepped forward and offered me an opportunity to work as a teacher instructing paramedicine for a while. And I was at a low point. I was absolutely at a low point psychologically. I was sad and a little bit lost. It affected music, as a matter of fact, as well. And then I had a little bit of experience with education, so it kind of made sense. And I tried it and absolutely fell in love with it. And watching a new generation of paramedics emerge, and you know, sort of imparting some wisdom of the past and things that I learned the hard way, and watching, you know, the light bulbs go off as you're teaching, you know, different things like neurology or some of the dry stuff. And what an amazing, absolutely rewarding experience to see some of those students graduate and become paramedics here in Simcoe County, and then even become advanced care paramedics and even critical care flight paramedics. Wow. It's like watching your children do better than you, in a sense, you know, to you know, they should always surpass the skills of their teacher. They say, what a beautiful, you know, opportunity for me to watch that. And I did it for a few years, and it was glorious. It was amazing. And it helped me through that dark time. And then, you know, as things happen, I got a call from South Lake, and there was a doctor visiting from Israel, and he specialized in a new procedure, and they were very interested in my particular problem. And this was 2007, and I was scared, absolutely scared, and went down, and within 30 minutes, they surgically repaired my little problem. And within 6 months, I was on no medications. And by the end of that year, I had my medical back, and I was back in uniform. and I was, rocking the aircraft again and doing some great
Wow.
work, and still kind of kept my hand in teaching a little bit. And then Nunavut kind of followed not too long after that. And yeah, that was a tough one. I wasn't sure how that was going to play out. I was pretty worried. And I'd like to say that there was some great strategy on my part that I'm gonna sort of resolve to get through it and be mature about it. But the truth is, I was a frightened child. I was absolutely a mess, and it was circumstance and serendipity and really good friends that got me through that. And yeah. And part of that journey too, I met my wife here in Barrie, and we married, and we've been together a long, long time. And so some good things came out of a pretty dark phase. And I hang on to that with both hands. It's a pretty important part of who I am as well.
No, thank you very much for sharing that. It's not easy for most people to share something like that. So appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you guys have any kids, or is it just you guys?
Yeah, so here's a funny little story. We decided that we wanted to maybe go exploring the world together, and we were young, and I had opportunities professionally to work abroad and do some things. And there was a restaurant on Dunlop Street in Barrie called Nawab. I don't know if you would remember that. It was an Indian restaurant. It was really good. And I think it's where the old the country place on the corner is at the 5 Points now. But anyway, there was this restaurant. We sat there and we were kind of talking about our life together and what we want to do. And we just had this a little bit impulsive conversation. Well, let's have a child. Let's have a family here. Everything's great. Life's looking good. Let's do it. And we made this conscious decision to have our first child that day in that restaurant on Dunlop. And I said, well, I'll only do it if we can name our child Nawab. But I lost that bet. It didn't work out. But anyway, we've since had two together, and we had an older one from a previous relationship. And we've got a beautiful family, an awesome family. And it's always been very, very Barrie based. We did wind up moving abroad, and we did do some work, some great stuff elsewhere. But Barrie has always been such a quintessential part of who we are as a family. And our oldest is in Toronto now, but the other two are here with us, obviously. And it's just funny that restaurant's no longer here. But what an important part of our family saga. We almost had a child named Nawab, which I thought was pretty funny. And yeah, as a result, we've actually started a nonprofit volleyball sports club here in Barrie, and we're pretty proud of that, to help kids access volleyball time and courts and develop teams and their skills, and that's felt really good too. Both our kids are kind of involved in that. And yeah,
I love volleyball. I played 1 year for the elites. I love beach volleyball. I still play volleyball. So hockey, golf, and volleyball would be my three favorite sports out there. So love hearing that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, we're a little bit new still, but we're I can't get enough volleyball. I agree too, especially
What's
the
it
beach.
called?
We're called the North Volleyball, or the North Sports Club. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have to look that up after the show.
Yeah, please do. Yeah. It's we're pretty excited about it. It's been it's almost 2 years now, I think, and it's been hugely successful.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that. If there was one thing, only one thing, that you could pick that you would want people to know about you guys, what would that one thing be?
About the company, about Aegis?
Yeah.
There are other companies that do what we do. There's other operators that do what we do, but to my knowledge, I think we're the only one that's owned and operated by paramedics. So my business partner out in Yellowknife is also a paramedic, and I think that's a pretty important difference between some of the competitors, because we have a good understanding of healthcare and of what role we play within a healthcare picture. So as opposed to just treating it like Uber and or UPS or something, or Amazon, we respect the fact that moving patients is part of something called patient flow throughout the healthcare system, and we're a big part of that. I'm not convinced the others provide that or understand it, and so the fact that our staff are trained at the very least as emergency medical responders, and trained to do things like deliver babies or participate in proper, what they call an ACLS arrest code, like just proper first aid and CPR. We take all of that really seriously. And yeah, I think sadly across Canada, that's, and certainly here in Ontario, that's not always the case. Okay. So I think that's important.
Oh, very good to know. Well, definitely sure there are some people that are interested that want to learn more information. And for those who are, what would be one of the best ways that they can go ahead and reach you guys?
Yeah, the website, absolutely. So it's Aegis Healthcare Solutions.ca. Aegis is spelled AEGIS, Aegis Healthcare Solutions.ca. And you can contact us through there, and you can watch some videos and see a little bit about who we are and what we do, and drop us a line. Yeah, that'd be great.
Rock on, man. That was a great conversation. Super happy to have you on the show and wish you all the best of luck out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpwithjeffandsean.com. That's gnpwithjeffandsean.com, or call 705-413-3775.